Hey there! So I received two notebooks from Herlitz. They're style notebooks. They are connected to the whole new style pen range, and these are called the My.Book Flex. And I'm going to show you this. This is the A6 model as well as the A5 model. They have, just going to remove this here. They have flexible plastic covers, and yes, this is just a sticker that peels off if you don't like that. This is their logo, and then you have a notebook with a little bit you can write your name on, and this was the grid paper, but as the little slip-in thing shows us, you can also get blank and I think ruled paper. And you can also modify the elastic bands that hold in the paper as well as the closure, so you can really adjust this to your own style. Now, of course, the name Midori comes to mind, but what I can tell you is that these things are a whole lot cheaper than Midori notebooks are, but of course you don't get the fancy leather cover. So if you're really into that, then you may have to go for Midori. I'm going to run a couple of writing tests in these two notebooks today. I have already used them, so I know what I'm talking about, but I just put those things on so you could see what you would get out of the box, so to speak. But as you can see, I have already been trying them out, so I know what I'm talking about. Let's start with this A6 model, okay? I have a couple of pens lined up here, and I think what we should start with is my platinum carbon desk pen. Let me zoom in a bit so you can really see what I'm doing. Here we have the platinum carbon. This is an extra fine nib, and the ink is Hero Blue Black. Okay, now let's move on to a fine Omas 360, the original model, and this is Waterman Florida Blue, my last bottle before it turns into Serenity. The writing so far is pretty smooth. This is not coated paper or anything. It's not rough though, but it doesn't have that Clairefontaine smoothness either. Okay, here we have a Visconti Ragtime limited edition. This is their medium nib, gold nib. This is 18K. This, I believe, is, I want to say 14K. Yes, 14K, and that was just a steel nib. And the ink here is one of the Ackermann inks, Hofkwartier Groen, I believe. Okay, now let's move on to the nibs I prefer. Here we have a Visconti Van Gogh. This is their Room and All model in broad, and the ink is Caran d'Ache Saffron. Unfortunately discontinued because it's a gorgeous ink. Now, one thing I will say about this paper is that because it is not coated, it sucks in the ink very quickly, as you can see, because this is a super wet pen. That's why I included this one, because it's another broad. It sucks in the ink very easily, which means it dries quickly, which is good for writing, but it has two downsides. There could be a little bit of feathering, and secondly, you won't really see the shading of your inks, because this saffron, for example, is a nice shader. Now, when it comes to feathering, you can see that there is quite a bit there, but it is not terrible. I have definitely seen worse on copy or paper, for example. Whereas in the other inks, other pens, it seems to be okay. And of course, the wetter the pen, the larger the probability of feathering. Okay, then I would like to move on to a stub. Here we have a Delta Fusion 82 1.1 stub. and the ink here is Kaweco Purple. And this is a fairly wet stub, and as you can see, again, that dries super quickly. Okay, now I thought we were going to use my jumbo pen again to do a little bit of flex writing. The ink here is Noodler's Heart of Darkness. And this pen is a beautiful gusher. Okay, and then finally, as to fountain pens, I think we should do a little bit of calligraphy. I didn't... Oh yeah, okay, there's still ink in there. I forgot which ink is this. This might just be Kaweco Black. It's a black ink. What's more important is that this is a Pilot Parallel 6mm calligraphy pen. So it lays down a lot of ink. Now I thought that what would be fair would be to also use an actual Herlitz pen. And this is their rollerball, which, as far as I can see, uses the same blue ink that comes in their fountain pen cartridges. So just saying that that's probably what this was these notebooks were meant to be used with. And this is the Herlitz gel pen, which is another ink, a bit darker blue. And then the final thing I'll use for this little notebook is a ballpoint, which also gives a pretty smooth writing experience. Okay, now when it comes to feathering, I don't think it's terrible. Even with this super wet broad, it has ruined the... Oh, this was Mont Blanc Leonardo, by the way, that limited edition red chalk, I believe it's called. It has ruined the shading, but the feathering is still under control. Now what we want to see is the show through on the other side of the page, and here you see that things go awry a bit. Extra fine is okay. Fine seems to be okay, although when you zoom in you can already see a little bit of bleed through here and there. Medium, a little bit of bleed through. Broad, bit of bleed through. Wet broad, a lot of bleed through. Stub seems to be okay. Flex, with a lot of ink, definitely bleeds through. Same thing goes for the calligraphy nib. But when it comes to the rollerball and the gel pen, it's fine. And the same goes for the ballpoint. Okay, now I could of course leave it at this and say, well, that's what these notebooks do, but to my surprise, there is a little bit of a difference I noticed between the A6 and the A5 notebooks in paper quality. This doesn't say what the paper weight is. I would be guessing 60 grams. I don't know if it's on those slips that of course fell off my table. A6 40 sheets 70 grams per square meter. Okay, that's for the A6. I see the difference here because the A4 is 80 grams per square meter. And that's a whole different ballgame. So let's try out the A5. Did I say A6 again? Sorry, I meant the larger one. So the larger one, this is the A5, this has 80 grams, this has 70 grams, okay, and that makes a significant difference. Let's do a bit more writing in these notebooks. Okay, I will zoom in a bit so that you can see what I'm doing again. We would start with the Platinum Carbon Desk Pen, extra fine, and that was that Hero Blue Black. I might as well give you the ink names as well when I have a bit more space, also it's just a bit more writing. Okay, then we move on to the Omas beautiful pen, 360, the original vintage style, not the pen that was relaunched later. This triangular design is a killer. I absolutely love it. This is a fine nib, and this is Waterman Florida Blue. Then we move on to the Visconti Ragtime. Visconti Ragtime! And that is the Akkerman. I'm willing to say Hofkwartier Groen, but you can't read it, it's Dutch anyway. Hofkwartier Groen. Don't worry, if you don't speak Dutch, you don't miss out that much. Hoewel ik wel veel verzoeken krijg om ook eens een keer iets in het Nederlands te zeggen, maar dat is een heel ander verhaal. Visconti. This is the Van Gogh, aka Van Gogh, in broad with Caran d'Ache. Saffron. I'm going to write down saffron. In Dutch it's saffran with an A at the end, actually two A's, so I hope I'm spelling this correctly, but you know what I mean. It's the flower stuff. Okay, Visconti. No, this is not a Visconti. What kind of fountain pen geek am I? Bloody hell. Faber-Castell. Emotion. And what you see here is that this ink takes a lot more time to dry than in the A6 notebook. Emotion, and this was a broad, and this was the Mont Blanc Leonardo, aka Red Chalk. Whoops. I actually wrote in the side of the pages. Okay. Let's move on to the Delta Fusion 82. I had to think about that for a second. And this is the 1.1mm stub, and the ink is Kaweco Purple. Alright, we're almost there, my friends, do not despair. Then we had some flexi business to attend to. That jumbo pen. Little bit of skipping. I probably have not primed it enough. That's not the paper. See, the whole pen is running dry. Go a bit slower. There we go. Don't blame it on the paper, that's the pen. It has an ink reservoir and it has a piston in here, and you have to unscrew this and then ink goes into the ink reservoir, and I didn't do that before I started to write, so it probably dried out a little bit. Don't worry, you have an idea of the flex anyway. Then we have a little bit of calligraphy to do. And finally, we should do the rollerball. The rollerball. As well as El Gel Pen. Plus the amazing ballpoint, coming to cinemas this summer. Alright, so what we have here is extra fine to broad to 1.1mm, italic to flex to 6mm to various writing instrument types. And I think the interesting comparison would be to see the broad Faber-Castell and the amount of feathering. So this was the A6 notebook, and then this is the A5 notebook, and as you can see, that looks considerably cleaner than this. So those 10 grams per square meter really make a big difference in this case. And that's the Flex. And even in the Flex, I think you don't really, probably can't focus that. No, that's okay. I have to go back a little bit. That was me wiping the ink, but there is no real feathering. Now, of course, I know that you want to see the bleed through and show through on the other side. Well, guess what? There pretty much is none. Extra fine, fine, medium, broad, wet, 1.1 stub. Flex even. Look at the very minimal bleed through of the Flex writing, and that was super wet writing, especially in this spot. 6mm calligraphy, no bleed through, just a little bit of show through. And the other writing instruments, rollerball, gel pen and ballpoint, they're all fine. So if you're a fountain pen user, and that's probably what you are when you're watching these videos, I would definitely recommend these A5 notebooks. As far as I understand, let me see, the cover is available in A4, A5 and A6, and in various colors, and then you can of course put multiple things together. You could have your grid paper, your ruled paper, or your, what you call that, your ruled paper, as well as your blank paper. Various colors of elastic bands, various types of these elastic bands, as well as various colors of the closure. So you can really modify your system. And I say again, we have seen it before in Midori, but these things are a fraction of the cost. And the paper I love, especially in these A5 ones. I am now considering getting an A4 one to see what that's like, because these things are great. They don't weigh much. They're pretty flat. Of course, if you would stick more in, more refills in, combine it, then it would become beefier. But even so, I think it's a great system, and I'm definitely a fan. So I hope this review was useful. I thank Herlitz for supplying me with these notebooks, and guys, I'll gladly see you later.